Oh my God. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Cherish Anderson, and I'm Cherish from the future that'll be telling you the stuff she forgot to say. And welcome to Full Body Yes podcast. So, I actually envisioned myself doing this podcast a little bit later. I envisioned myself doing this podcast after the situation that I'm in. But God told me yesterday that I am to do it now, and that I am also to talk about the situation that I'm in. Not later when everything's all better, but while I'm in the thick of it. And I almost immediately had diarrhea when God told me this, because I'm like, I'm going to be humiliated. But that's not the truth. I'm not going to be humiliated. I'm going to be myself. I'm going to be me. If there's any place that is going to be a safe space for me or for you guys, it's going to be this podcast. So I had to get past that block yesterday, and I said that the next day, which is tonight, would be the day that I would tell my story, my entire story, front to back. Telling my story isn't really scary. It's just this last part that's a little scary and uncomfortable for me. But nevertheless, it's time. So I live in this beautiful loft-style apartment in Atlanta, in Buckhead. And I worked hard to get here, very hard to get here. This was probably my dream apartment. I have these huge ceilings, these huge windows, all of this beautiful sunlight. Everything is beige and plush and earthy, and just how I liked it. And to the average person looking in at me being a lash tech and living in Buckhead and living in this beautiful apartment and living my best life on Instagram, and everyone knows I'm pretty spiritual too, so I post my spiritual things and I post my little lashes, and I'm a dancer. I occasionally take a dance class here and there, and that's been about it. So nobody really knows what happens under the surface. But the secret is that I am currently 3 months behind on my rent. I have not paid my rent in 3 months. It's probably the scariest thing that I've ever been through in my entire life. Almost as scary as getting chased by a wild animal. I currently do not have the money in my account. I currently do not have a plan to get the money into my account. But as scary as it is, I feel the most peace I have felt in my entire life. I feel the most grounded, the most in alignment, and the most excited I have ever felt. It's honestly quite literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. This season of my life literally broke me down and built me back up piece by piece, because God had something so big for me, something so big that I wouldn't have been ready for had I not went through this entire process. And now I know something huge is about to happen. I can feel it in my bones that I'm literally about to pay them what I owe, hire a moving company, move to Miami, to an even nicer place, and live my best life. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I know that that's what's going to happen. And I'm going to tell you how today by following my full body yes. Don't get me wrong, this is not a story about materialism. If anything, this is the story about how everything I wanted in my life literally got stripped, taken away from me, piece by piece, so that I could find myself at my core, at my essence. This is a story about deprivation, about sacrifice, about every single thing in my life that I thought was set out to put me on a detour or get me off track, or as just pure adversity, literally spoon feeding me and designed to get me to be the person that I was supposed to be. Because I thought I was so sure about what I wanted out of my life and how my path was supposed to go. But every single one of these detours and every single one of these twists and turns that I thought was setting me back was really a slingshot propelling me forward into being the woman that I'm supposed to be. Sometimes your full body yes can scare the shit out of you. Quite literally, even sitting here telling this story, I almost had diarrhea last night when God told me to do this, because I wanted to start my podcast from a place of authority or a place of, look where I made it, or, okay, no, that sounds fake. I just wanted to start my podcast from a place of not looking stupid or not humiliating myself. But I had to check myself and be like, hey, if anything, you wanted to make this podcast so that you could have a safe space and so that other people could feel safe. So how are the other people that are behind on their rent, or how are the other people that are going through things in their life going to feel safe or have a place to go if you're not all of yourself? I'm also realizing that I'm a leader, and leaders aren't perfect. They're just the ones that go first. It's up to me to be what I need. If I don't see it out here, I have to be the example. But God said, I need you to share it in the thick of it and still share your faith and still shout my name, that my name is all over it. And I'm going to be obedient. I'm going to be obedient. And I feel like this is a huge moment of me taking my power back and owning my story, because you may be saying, yeah, you could be saying one of two things. You could either literally be jaw dropped, like, oh my gosh, Cherish, I thought she was rich, or I thought she was just doing amazing, she's a fraud. Or you could be thinking, okay, we've all been there, so what's your point? Well, I have a few points here. My first point is everybody has a trigger point in their life, or that thing, like a weak spot. Financial security and survival mode has been my weak spot for my entire adult life. I'm 25 now, and I've been on my own since I was 17. So that's almost a decade of this karmic loop. So I want to talk about how I overcame that. Yes, overcame, because I did overcome it. Even still, I overcame it. Point number 2 being that I don't know why it was such a huge irrational fear for this to be my first episode, but it was. To share or start my podcast from a place of extreme vulnerability. But I had to change my perspective on that. Because as I face this huge irrational fear and just wrap it in love and give it to you guys, I have to remember it's bigger than me. Like, I can't be that selfish. So this is also me facing a fear and establishing trust from the very beginning, because this is supposed to be a safe space. And number 3, we're literally explaining the process of the full body yes and what that even is, and how you can literally look stone cold crazy to your family and to your friends and to everybody around you, but you're following your intuitive navigation. You're following the Holy Spirit blindly. And things start making sense along the way, even if it's only to you. And that's okay, because this is how we're going to get in alignment with our destiny. And sometimes an entire timeline has to crumble to get to where you're supposed to be next. And I have to be okay with that. And you guys do too. So without further ado, if you've made it here this long, go ahead and get comfortable with me, because it's time to get to know me. And I promise that through this story, by the end of it, you're going to embrace every single challenge in your life with open arms, with open, loving arms, because you will then be aware that each and every obstacle and hindrance was put there by you and God before you even came to earth. Everything was placed here to design you, to cultivate everything that it would take for you to be who you came here to be. So let's get started. Okay, so the story starts in high school. Growing up, my mother told me my entire childhood that I was going to be a lawyer. And she told my sister that she would be a doctor. Well, as she continued to say this, I had basically been in a dance studio my entire life. I was on the middle school dance team, then I was on the high school dance team. I danced from the time I could walk until still pending. And I was usually the only Black girl. Basically, my entire reputation was the token Black girl that knows how to dance. And that was okay with me. I just wanted to dance, and that was about it. And in senior year of high school, they made us take these quizzes that kind of get your gears turning on what you're going to be in life. And my answers to these quizzes would always be in the entertainment field. So dancing, acting, performing. And I also had some answers that were in the communications arena. But nothing about being a lawyer. Although I have the argument skills to be a lawyer and I have the mouth to be a lawyer, it wasn't really something that I was drawn to. It was not my full body yes. But communicating in general, I was pretty good at. So my mom was like, why don't you major in communications? You could be a news broadcaster. I could see you telling us the news on the news channel. And I was like, I could see that. But you know what would be even better? If I was the one they were talking about on the news. Now that's more of a full body yes. And my mom, bless her soul, she was always so supportive of me. So the first thing that popped up on Google was this conservatory, this performing arts college, AMDA. And you had to audition to get in. It was in Hollywood, California. And I was like, yeah, this is it. This is exactly what I want to do. This is my full body yes. And my mom is like, okay. I was born in California, so we have tons of family there, although I was raised in Mississippi. So over the summer, there was an audition in the Bay Area. So we went to visit family, and at the same time, I had my audition. Long story short, I got into the school, and when I tell you, I probably haven't been that excited since, until now. I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and everybody just knew I was going to be a star. Or at least I had the stars in my eyes. So basically, I graduated high school, and at the time, my mom and my stepdad were getting a divorce. Now, this is my story. This is my truth. So I'm going to just say this right now. Anyone out there that is talked about in this story, make your own. This is my truth. So this divorce was much needed because this was a very narcissistic and codependent relationship that I saw growing up. Now we have my mother, who is this radical Bible-thumping Christian that wants to pray everything away and say that the change is going to come. Then we have this narcissistic, verbally abusive, and other types of abusive father that never does change. This is what my subconscious is getting programmed into, foreshadowing for dating. And I was a little apprehensive to leave my mother alone, but nevertheless, I was so excited to get to Hollywood and get on track with becoming that dancer, that celebrity, that dancing behind Beyonce, all of that stuff. I was just ready to start my life. I was just independent like that. I didn't really have to be up under family. So I got on a flight to Hollywood, California by myself. My mother wasn't able to come with me, but we used all the money that we had to get me there and to get me a couple $100s to get like some dorm stuff. And you couldn't tell me nothing. So I get there, I'm in the school, and keep in mind, you had to audition. So basically, everyone that's the best from their town is here. Everyone at this school is the best from where they came from. But when you put all the best in the room, somebody has to be the worst. And lo and behold, I got humbled real quick because what they taught me in Mississippi was not enough for me to keep up with the big dogs. And almost immediately, I was just like, oh my gosh, what am I doing here? But I had some amazing teachers that saw the potential in me and really were so hard on me. But at the same time, I had this chronic pain.
We still do.
It was weird. I don't know if it's something I did to myself with all the contortion, the self-contortion stuff I was trying to do in my childhood, or if it was just scoliosis or what. But almost immediately, upon starting to train, my body would just hurt chronically every single day. It was crazy. It just sapped the fun out of everything for me. You're not waking up at 9 a.m. to go to English class or math class. You're waking up to dance your ass off with people that are levels above you. And every day is a competition. Every day is about being better. Every day is about standing out. Every day is about this intense discipline and this rigorous body training. It's almost like I wasn't mature enough to appreciate where I was and take full advantage of it. At one point, I had got a concussion and I milked that concussion. I milked that concussion because I did not want to go to those classes. And I also ended up with a boyfriend during this time. And this is when I actually lost my virginity in college to this person, which this is not about that, but it was like a safe, wonderful experience. I took my time until I was ready. Either way, this person was probably my second biggest heartbreak in my entire life. He was very artistic. He made music, and it was so inspiring to me. Like in his home, he would make music with his best friend, and they would just make these beats on the spot and then start rapping and singing to them on the spot. And it was the most invigorating, euphoric thing I had ever felt in my life at the time. It was just so amazing to watch that I just knew that one day they were going to be the biggest things ever in mainstream media. I just knew it because I got to sit here firsthand and see the creative genius at play. I was even so inspired that a lot of the times I would sit there and I would have my notes in my phone and I would be writing music. Like when I tell you, it was one of the best things I've seen in my life. To this day, I think that they should be stars. And this was my first relationship outside of the nest, outside of being at home. This was both of our first relationship outside of parental supervision. I had nothing to compare it to. We didn't even really go on any dates. It was just a lot of me walking down Hollywood Boulevard to his apartment. There was also some toxicity, which no shame to him at all. I also remember instead of doing laundry at the dorms, I would do my laundry at his house because I just felt more comfortable. And one of the times we had gotten in this big fight and he threw all of my clothes out into the hallway. And I had to call my friends to come get me from school down the street. And they came, but they were like, if we help you carry all of your stuff back to the school, we better never see you with this boy again. And lo and behold, I was with him again, like a clown. So everybody hated me at school, but you live and you learn, right? So the huge reality check, the huge ego death of not being the best dancer in town anymore, my body feeling like I got hit by a train every morning, and then this partner of mine being, which we were both young, so no hate, but basically being verbally abusive and just crazy, along with getting bullied by a lot of my roommates and classmates because they could tell I was milking my concussion, and because they could tell that I was blinded by love with this crazy person at the time he was. It was just a lot on my little 17-year-old self. So those were the main themes that I was kind of battling in college. And a lot of the times, because we couldn't really afford it, I wouldn't really go home. And like I said, my parents were going through a divorce. So they gave me money when they could, which was probably $200 a month. I ended up getting a job. I worked at Equinox on Hollywood Boulevard. But Thanksgiving, Christmas, it was very rare for me to go home. The few times that I did, I enjoyed it, but I just started kind of getting numb to the idea of family and support. Even though they were doing everything for me and did everything for me to be there, I just felt very isolated. So on one of the semester breaks, I come home, and this is not the home I grew up in. We are now in Washington instead of Mississippi because the divorce is final. My mom and sister are now back to where my mom is from, which we had lived here once before. But nevertheless, we are in Spokane, Washington, and I am depressed, chronic depression, and I don't know what it was, but I was at my lowest rock bottom. It was just really a defining moment for me. And I literally remember, because it snows in Washington, so I literally remember laying in my twin bed that I grew up in, my twin bed, and I would just look out the window at the snow. And that's all I remember, because I would not get out of bed, barely to do anything. All I could really do was sleep. And I was just so depressed and so obsessed with this boy that had broken up with me. And I just felt rejected by everyone. So at the time, like, wow, didn't even have bills yet. But at the time, that was probably my lowest low. One of those days, it wasn't anything that I read. It wasn't anything that I saw on TV. It wasn't anything that I looked up. Something just shifted. Something just shifted in my brain. I think that was my first spiritual awakening. Like, you can only go so low before you just shoot up. And I realized I created all of this. My thoughts, my beliefs, I facilitated this entire experience that I'm in right now. And I was so negative. I was so pessimistic about everything. And I realized that. And from that moment forward, I began to switch every single negative thought I ever had into something positive, or basically the opposite. So that rock bottom triggered my first spiritual awakening. And I think after that, I started seeing Leor Alexandra videos and different people, Bob Proctor. And I just remember trying to like sit my mother down and like feed her these videos of like, look, everything's energy. Look, this is how everything works. Like, and yeah. So that's how that started. And I literally could not wait until that semester break was over to get back to Hollywood and basically change my life and start to re-architect my life with this newfound perspective that I had. So I went back to school and I fought through the adversity. I kept going. But at a certain point, my mom was like, we can't really afford this school anymore. So if you're not really obsessed with being there and you're not that happy, because you don't seem that happy, maybe this should just be your last semester. So I made it about 3 semesters. And I was like, honestly, that's fine with me, because a bachelor's degree in dance and acting doesn't really guarantee you jobs. So I was okay with that. But I was like, I want to still live in LA though. Long story short, that entire semester, I did my best to figure out how to stay in LA. Everything fell through. It's like I was not supposed to be there. So any plans that I made with people or things I tried to orchestrate just didn't happen. I could have worked 5 jobs and not afforded it. And I just remember feeling so robbed and like it was so unfair, because I had classmates that had apartments. And it's like, why do I have to leave? But at the time, one of my close friends, she had moved to Orlando. And she went to a school to pursue music called Full Sail. And she had a huge community of other artists around her. And I'm like, I mean, that's better than Spokane, Washington. What am I going to do artsy in Washington? So I moved to Orlando with her. I was so grateful. But that didn't end up being a match at all. Like, it started off pretty fun, but that whole bullying thing that I experienced in college, it was like that on steroids. Now, I have love with all these people now. Like, we're all good. But at the time, being that young, I think with me being so bright-eyed and bushy-tailed from being in the precipice of my first spiritual awakening, I just had this light in me, and I just felt so excited to share and so excited to embody it. But I don't think it was received very well. Now, she was a little bit of a know-it-all with all that new information, all those new downloads. So I could see how she ruffled a little feathers, trying to fix everybody's life and stuff. Nevertheless, I basically got bullied out of Orlando. And I ended up back at square one, back in Washington, with more trauma under my belt that I had left with. At this point, I just felt defeated. I'm like, where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna live? How am I gonna support myself to live my dreams? How am I going to get discovered? How am I going to get to hone in on my crafts if I can't live in a place that thrives off of art? I'm like, the math isn't mathing, and why is there so much opposition for me? So my mother was actually on the phone with my godmother at the time, and my godmother had lived in Atlanta. So she was like, Cherish should just move here with us. Atlanta's the Black Hollywood. There's Tyler Perry Studios, there's music videos, there's all types of stuff. And she could stay with us until she is ready to get her own place or gets on her feet. At this point, I was literally exhausted. Telling the story alone doesn't do it enough justice to how just tired I was. This cycle of not really knowing where I'm going to live, or not being able to live in a place where I can thrive, essentially. I just did not want to keep doing that. I finally just wanted some ease or some flow. My mom said that it was a go, that I could go, and I was eager to go. I just remember being so tired. I literally remember being in the airport and just like crying and hugging my mom, like, I'm just so tired. Like, when is everything just gonna work out for me? And she was like, you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be okay. And you can always come home. Like, you're not stuck in any situation. You're safe with us. But I just wanted to like live my best life. So I moved to Atlanta. I just moved here with a few suitcases. I moved in with my godmother.
And when I tell y'all she was old school and strict, I didn't have a strict mother because I wasn't bad. I could really do whatever I wanted growing up. And then I literally just came from living in Hollywood where I was in the streets, I was doing as I pleased, to now having like a curfew and everything. I respected her home, but it was a change for sure.
I didn't have a car yet. I didn't have any jobs lined up or anything. But I started meeting a few people. The first job that I got was at this lounge. Lounges are like really big here. So I was kind of like a bottle girl type of situation, serving, making hookah, doing all of that. And I was just trying to save my money so that I could avoid the cycles that I was in before. So I was just trying to make money and save money. So my mom eventually helped me get a car so I could get around. And as I was working in this lounge, I met this guy. I'm about 19 or freshly 20. This guy is about 31, 32. We start dating and we end up in a relationship. And this is also around the time that my godmother, which I was so grateful to it being her idea for me to move here, but she ended up saying that I had to leave. She said my time was up after a few months. I would say I maybe lived with her for about 6 months. And you'd have to know how triggering that was for me at the time, because I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. You've got to actually be kidding me.
You literally cannot make this up. When I tell you I was speechless. And to make matters worse, my mom had about one more relative that I could probably stay with. And it was like a close friend. And she lived even farther away. But hey, that's my only option right now. So I move in with her. But this new boyfriend that I have, he lives down the street from my job. So a lot of the times I would spend the night with him. But I guess I would spend the night with him so much that she's like, it's no point in you being here, so you have to leave. So this is 2 relatives that have now kicked me out. I was not a bad guest. I was not a disrespectful guest. I went to work and that was pretty much it. So very triggering.
So the guy I'm dating, he's like, you can move in with me. I never had the intention to live with the man at all. But we both didn't want me to just leave Atlanta so soon. So I moved in with him. And I still don't know how well I can articulate to you guys how traumatized I was. Like how unsettled I felt. Like how ungrounded I felt. He had to reassure me almost every day, hey, this is our space. This is our stuff. Like, you're safe here. Like, you're good. You can exhale. You can relax here.
Literally saying all the right things.
And I just couldn't get that through my head. I just felt so on edge. Like, I didn't want to unpack. Like, I just did not feel secure anywhere because every time I got a place, it was time for me to leave. So long story short, eventually I did get comfortable. His friends became my friends. He was a very social person. He curated a lot of amazing events and things around Atlanta. He was very creative and everything. So I met a lot of cool people. He always had events at his house. He lived in this beautiful loft type of place. And he even let me decorate. We went to IKEA and just like dressed it up in all this boho stuff that I loved. And I really felt comfortable. This was a textbook playing house scenariyo. He had a son. I love kids. I was cooking breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I was telling my friends, oh, I can't go out with y'all. I gotta be home to cook dinner. We were helping with homework. My mom was sending down Christmas presents. Like, we were serious. And I was mature for my age. So We were serious. I would watch his son while he would go out and party and do God knows what. And one night he literally even got a DUI. His baby mom didn't know about me yet. I was just in some mess. I had to call her, find her job, call her job, tell her that I have her son and that I always have her son, and that I was gonna take him to daycare and pick him up. My boyfriend, her ex, was in jail for a DUI. So I had to bail him out and I had to do all that type of stuff at not even 21 years old. So yeah. At this time, I also had transitioned into a job at this yoga studio. And shout out to Southwest Atlanta Yoga. But I became kind of like a creative director and social media designer for her, and kind of like created this marketing strategy or vision for her new yoga studio. And that was amazing because I was then in an environment that just really was soothing and was just more in alignment with what I wanted to do. I ended up getting laid off from that job. As comfortable as I was with my boyfriend at the time, one day we had argued.
And our girl is not perfect. So now he done got me comfortable and reassured me so much. So we're arguing. We are going back and forth. I'm being a brat. I'm pouting, you know, like I'm pouting. But nothing could ever warrant this response.
And he was like, you know what? Get the fuck out. You can talk all big and bad. Go get your shit together. And it was so traumatizing. When I tell you, he basically went into the closet and started throwing all of my stuff on the floor and everywhere. And basically like kind of this narcissistic flare up of just like verbal abuse, like laughing at me and like humiliating me and like throwing my stuff around and basically using all of my vulnerabilities against me. So everything that I told him, or every way in which he cared for me, basically like turning it around and flipping it, but like also laughing about it. It was like one of the darkest, coldest things I had ever experienced.
This was something out of a movie. Imagine somebody casually eating chocolate cake at the counter while literally calling you every name in the book, laughing at you, all your stuff all over the floor. Like, I don't think I could have got any more numb at that point.
And I just remembered that also being a rock bottom moment, because in that moment I had realized I lost, because all my eggs were in that one basket, I had lost everything in a matter of seconds. Not only did I get laid off from that yoga job, I had lost, which this was my best friend, this was my lover. His friends were my friends, so I'm also losing all of the people that are on his side, and my dignity, and literally my place of residence, like where I live, all just wiped out in one sweep. So, oh my gosh, literally almost identical in my head, my clothes getting thrown around again. Whew. Like there's really some karmic loops and cycles happening here. But I knew I was not going to stay. I remember that night just being numb, and he actually went out for a drink or something. And you know, usually when they do that, like they may come back and feel bad. He came back and was like, this shit's still all over the floor, and went at it again and did some more stuff. It was even meaner. So talk about just dark and like traumatizing. So that next day I left. I didn't know where I was going to go, but I got in my car. At this time, I still only had enough belongings to fit in my vehicle. So I got in my car and I got out of there. My mom, of course, she told me, you know, you can always drive home. It was about a 5.5 hour drive away. And my mom was like, baby, you can come home. But that's not my personality. I'm like, this man's not about to have me crying home to my mom and drive me out of Atlanta. I'm not going home without a fight. I'm going to try first. I'm not going to just go home. I'm going to try. So my dad paid for me to get a hotel for about 2 nights. The first 2 nights, all I could do was cry. I was in shock, actually, because remember how tired I was at the airport? And then for this to happen, this is worse than LA. This is worse than Orlando. So it's like, you've got to be kidding me, actually. So all I can really do is cry. And that's about it. And that's all I did. Cry and sleep. And then I was able to stay with a friend for a few nights. And from there, and it's so, looking back, oh my gosh, poor baby Cherish. I was in so much shock that I didn't even have any pride. I was just in so much shock that I wanted everything to go back to the way that it was before. I just wanted to wake up and everything be the same and that the argument never happened. So I literally was blowing this man up. I literally was apologizing. I literally was trying to do everything to like fix this. Not really. I think it was just out of like panic and desperation because I'm literally homeless. That was the old me, and I'm gonna stick beside her.
Not too much of my girl, because remember, she's never seen no happy relationship yet. She don't even know what real love looks like yet. She's only seen a professional Bob the Builder and abusers. So let's give her some grace, because eventually she's the one on the front lines to break all these generational curses.
So I literally was blowing this man up. He literally was not talking to me. But at a certain point, I had to ask him, hey, can I come there and shower? I came there and showered, and he basically said something like, yeah, you can't come back here. Like, you can't live here again. Anyways, so then I ended up with the Hebrew Israelites.
So I drive down to the West End, and anybody that knows Atlanta, the West End, it's the hood, but also it's where the hoteps are. And I actually take a second to sit on a curb with some homeless people. And I'm like, this feels kind of free. Like, we're sitting here, people are driving by, people with obligations, and we're free. We're out of the matrix. And it was nice for a second. But I was like, yeah, no, y'all got it. This is not me. Like, I see I feel the freedom in this, but I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna keep fighting.
So a lot of people don't know this, but my biological father, I've never met him before, but he moved to Israel when I was born. So initially when I first moved to Atlanta, I discovered there's a lot of Hebrew Israelites. Okay, that doesn't need a quote, but people from Israel or that feel connected to Israel that live here, and they have this whole lifestyle that they live. They believe in being polyamorous, they're vegan, they wear all of these different African prints, and they're very sustainable and very naturistic and very noble, and a lot of them have very much integrity, but then a lot of them I notice have a lot of ego, because like a lot of people like make fun of hoteps, and it's a whole thing. But I'm very grateful to the close friends that I had. One of them at the time was about to go back to Ghana for a few months, so I got to stay in his room. Like I said, I was depressed. I was in that form of depression where you're very low functioning, like you can't really do anything. But it's like, I didn't have time for that. I had to find a job. I had to get out of this situation because I'm sleeping on a couch. We see I like aesthetics. There was no aesthetics there. There's no aesthetics. I had went to Walmart and bought like some sheets to put over a couch to make it a bed. And the window in the bedroom is like very small. It's very dark and dense. that just did not contribute to how I was feeling. I was more than grateful to be able to lay my head there and to be there. But the energy state that I was in, I'm just painting a picture for you guys. It was not cute. It was a house of men, and there was no aesthetics for me. There was, yeah, I didn't have any guidance. But I'm so grateful to each of you guys that were there for me in that time, because nobody else was. So thank you. I'm just saying how I felt at the time. I was young. Okay, so I have responsibilities. I have to find myself a job. I have to get somewhere more comfortable. I have to do work for the owner of this home so that I can justify living there. So I have to help promote his business and work with him. And also just hold myself together. I have to keep myself together. So this was a lot. I was able to find this job. And at this time, I had kind of like this reputation in the service industry. And I got hired on the spot to this lounge that ended up being the most popular lounge in Atlanta. The most prestigious, the most pretentious, the most bougiest lounge in Atlanta, which is an amazing place, by the way. But this is just my experience. I got hired on the spot. I started working there. I was still about 20 years old. And keep in mind, I'm virtually homeless. I'm sleeping on a couch. I don't look like what I'm going through. I never do. But that whole bullying pattern that we had, oh yeah. That started almost immediately. So I just remember being picked on so much, and I was not perfect. I was this naive little girl, but I was vulnerable. Nobody knew my situation, and I didn't really have much of a backbone at the time. So I was just like, it just really lowered my vibration a lot. So the people that I was staying with, I don't have the answer, so I don't know what it was that happened, but they ended up turning off the hot water on me. I don't know if it was kind of like this ploy or like a passive way to push me out, or if it was because I wasn't paying any of the bills, or if it's because the work that he wanted me to do, I wasn't doing to his ability, or if it was just that the water was just off and it was just off because of something else. But I didn't have hot water. And I was going into this job and I was being given such a hard time by the waitresses and the girls there, and even the chef at one point. And it's like nobody even knew that I didn't have hot water or like a shower or a bed. Like at this point, I just wanted a bed to sleep in. And I saw myself as a victim at the time. And it was hard. But I pulled up my bootstraps and I went to that job every single day. And I would say about a few weeks into being there, the Hebrew Israelites that I'm staying with, they are like, okay, it's about time for you to go. But luckily, I had already had something lined up. So it was like, oh, it's fine. I'm leaving on Saturday or whatever day. One of my friends, like very close friends at the time, he sent me a screenshot of this Instagram story from, I guess, one of his girlfriends. And she was like, I need someone to rent out our master bedroom. So I went and checked it out. It was in Decatur. It was these two girls. I went in. They seemed very chill, like almost too laid back. It seemed very safe. Like it seems like a really nice, quiet start for me. I would have the master bedroom and master bathroom, and I made enough money to rent out the room. So I said yes, and I immediately had moved in. I went to that job every single day with my chin held high.
While I slept on an air mattress for almost a year.
As high as I could put it. One of the nights while I was renting out this room, I kid you not, I was sleeping In the middle of the night, I hear screaming, I hear help, I hear all of that. And I'm thinking there's an intruder. So I lock my bedroom door and I call 911. Lo and behold, one of the girls, her boyfriend at the time was literally like beating her. That was like so triggering because I already had PTSD from domestic abuse in my childhood. Like back in college, if I even heard a scream or like if I heard a laugh that was too high pitched, my nervous system, my heart was already beating out my chest. So this like actual abuse happening, it was very triggering. And then it was crazy because once the police came and everything, her head was bleeding. She had to be taken to the hospital. But later on, she was like, don't be calling the police on him. So that was a whole thing. But I didn't have time to move out. I didn't have time to do anything else. So later that same night when I came home, he was sitting on the couch. It was us alone in the house. And I ended up giving him a reading. I ended up helping him because it's like I have to be on his side anyway because she's still on his side and I have to live here and be cool with these people. I ended up literally giving him a reading and like helping him with his life. But nevertheless, I kept working this job. I kept living here because I didn't have time to do anything else. All I had time to do was stack my paper. So when that lease ended, I moved with them to the next place.
And me and the other girl would be waking up to this abuse almost every other day. One time the police was on the way and I was like, I'm leaving. I don't even want to be in the apartment. So I just get in my car to go to TJ Maxx or something. And the boy that be beating her ass, he literally came down and was like, let me get in the car with you. Let me get in the car with you. And I'm like, he gets in my car and we drive, and it's like now I'm helping him basically get away from the cops. I come back to the house, the police are in there and they're like, we saw you, we saw y'all, where is he? And I'm like, look, before you even make this something that is not, I have to live in this apartment with these people. They're both crazy, both of them. It's not just him, it is not just her. They're both crazy and I have to live here and I have to be cool with them. So unless you plan on getting me my own apartment, Mr. Police, you need to understand what's going on here and the dynamics. And tell me why this police officer at one point had almost convinced me to be a police. Like we had exchanged numbers and he was like, if you ever feel unsafe, let me know. And like I was about to be a police. I had the application and I also had the sign-off sheet to accompany him in the passenger seat and like shadow him. It was a whole like few weeks of my life where I was actually considering being a police officer.
And eventually that girl got healing. She moved out. I think she went back home with family. And one of my close friends of the time moved in with us. So that was fun. I actually had like a real friend move in to the apartment. And I just literally kept working. I just kept working. But you know, I was the hostess of this spot. Having to be there at 4 p.m. when it didn't even start popping off until midnight, we had a lot of extra time on our hands. So I would get copy paper and I would write and I would doodle and I would create. And I came up with the idea for this lash business called Mindful Minx. Lashes is huge in Atlanta. And I was like, okay, well, how can I stand out? I came up with the idea to make it this restorative experience because you have to lay there for at least an hour or two anyways. So what if I made it this experience where you can meditate while you're getting your lashes done, or you can listen to affirmations while you're getting your lashes done, or you can even get your chakras balanced or receive a reading or a prophetic word at your appointment. I wrote Mindful Minx on that paper and I wrote out a business plan, and my mother paid for me to get this lash certification. I just didn't feel right starting because I still lived in this 3-bedroom apartment. Our living room was not even furnished. We all lived out of our bedrooms. And I didn't want to lash out of my bedroom. So I held off. And when that lease ended, me and my best friend, we got our own apartment with one of her friends. So it's three of us, three intentional people getting a place together. So we looked for a place. We found this beautiful open apartment, this open concept with this huge living room with a sunroom, and we all had a plan. I was going to do lashes. My best friend, she was going to do nails, and my friend's friend, which was still my friend, she was designing clothes. And our apartment was just so freaking cute. Everything was pink. This was going to be where I started my lash business, but not yet. So back to the lounge I'm working at. At this point, the pimple at this lounge is coming to a head. I'm feeling tried, I'm feeling disrespected, I'm feeling victimized, and I want out. So one day, I literally decided to just walk out. In the middle of my shift, I walked out and I never went back. But you know what's crazy? The next day was the COVID shutdown. Literally, I couldn't go back anyways. There's a whole character in this story that you guys don't even know, which is I had a different boyfriend at this time in my life.
And this is when the redemption story comes in. Now, this is a very karmic partner, which means we were actually put here to quite literally trigger each other. Being polar opposites, his strengths are my weaknesses, and my strengths are his weaknesses. We literally are exactly what each other needs, but that still causes friction. This was my first long-term relationship. Like, most of my time in Atlanta has been with this person. And we've had some beautiful ups and some crazy downs. Definitely dragged me through the mud. This person watched me become more of a woman before his eyes. And I went from the girl from that first two relationships and literally transitioned over the years into this woman with boundaries, with respect for herself, a woman who loved herself, a woman who eventually became a boss babe, an entrepreneur. I literally wanted to stay true to herself and wanted to find herself, whether that meant there was a man or not. And I have a lot to thank him for because I got to experience some amazing things with him, but even the downs were training wheels for me to become a badass woman. I got tested and triggered so much that I had no choice but to become a woman of stature, a woman that couldn't be shaken, a woman without a codependent bone in her body.
And this guy, we're not together right now, but he's someone that I love dearly. It was just so hard for us. So we decided to part ways. At the time, he was a manager at Amazon, and it's COVID. The only thing open is Amazon. So I ended up getting hired at a different building and literally working like a slave at a conveyor belt, scanning packages and picking up packages from a conveyor belt. And these packages are anything as small as a toothbrush to as big as like a dresser. Like, it's crazy. We're wearing these gloves and these vests, and there's these people like barking at you to do it fast. Literally every time we had lunch, they would print these papers out and post them on the wall of everybody in the whole warehouse, from the fastest person to the slowest person. Everybody is on this paper. And if you're one of the slow ones, they come hunt you down and they find you. It's crazy. So that wasn't a full body yes at all. Eventually, I felt led to quit that as well. I worked the night shift. So I would go in at about 5 or 6 p.m. and I would leave at about 6 a.m., like right before daylight. I couldn't do it. So you know what I did? I decided to follow my full body yes and start my lash business.
No backup, no plan B.
Now, lashes